Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of Steelers Stat Geek. It's Tuesday night. It's 9 p.m. Eastern. It's Deputy Dave. It's Big Bro Sco. It's that time. Let's get geeky. How's it going, Rich?
Going good. As good as can be.
Ezra just said it in the live chat. You said it to me when you came on. Go ahead and
What's
say it.
up, Steeler Nation?
That's exactly what Rich said to me before we went on the air. And then Ezra says it there. So we have to say, what's up?
What's up?
It's nice to be back. It's good to be here. Hey, here's how it's going to go tonight. We're going to do the two shows like we have been doing. A lot of you have an idea what our topic is for the second show because it was brought up last week. It was a question about expanded playoffs and what that could mean. That was thanks to Thaddeus asked that one. Boy, I hope he's here tonight for this. We thought about doing this all as one show because the player that we're talking about tonight, it's kind of tough to talk stats when it comes to offensive linemen. But you know what? We're going to talk some of the numbers and we'll talk it through. This might be a little bit of a shorter show. Then we'll go on and roll on to the Q&A where we can address that in that show. So either way, we're going to be together for a great time. This is family time. This is Steelers family. Here we are together. This is great. We got people checking in the live chat. It's wonderful. For those of you that are just listening in for the first time, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be in podcast form, we want to make sure that you realize you are checking into behindthesteelcurtain.com. Yeah, let's see if I can get the actually.
Yeah, let's try it.
Behindthesteelcurtain.com. It is your one-stop stop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We've still got all kinds of great content constantly flowing out day in and day out. It's coming. You've got it from a variety of writers, so therefore it's a variety of opinions. Don't expect to have every article say the same thing. Don't expect to hear one opinion in one article and be like, wait a second, you said this before. Probably wasn't that writer. I don't know. Maybe it was that writer. People I'm sure have called me out on stuff like that where I say one thing and something else. But that's the ever evolving notion of a Steeler fan. You ever have a hot take, brother, that you completely backed off of and even forgot that you made it?
Yeah, or realized just how terrible it was.
Yeah, hey, let's talk about one of the articles from the website this past weekend. Michael Beck had an article who, for those of you that weren't here last week, he sat in on this episode with us where we talked about, that was last week, right? I'm not getting my times mixed up, right? That was last week.
Last week. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was on last. That's right. Because he was plugging his new podcast,
correct,
which is coming out that's been out. He's had two of his regular episodes of the live mic. He's had an interview with Chase Claypool. And then there was another one. I didn't get to check it out yet today. Another one came up through Behind the Steel Curtains podcasts where he was on 93.7 The Fan. So he was here. He did an article this weekend that said, hey, what's your biggest Steelers hot take? I'll feature some of these later on. I chimed in. I'm like, sure, I'll do this. My hot take was James Conner will have a pretty decent year. He's going to get dinged up. And when it comes to the playoffs, it's going to be Benny Snell football. And he's going to average 125 per game in the playoffs and then rush for 1,500 yards the next year. That was my super hot take. So some people might think I'm crazy, and I'm okay if I'm wrong. That's what makes it a hot take. So that was a lot of fun. Did you get to check that one out? I know on the weekends, a lot of times you don't get to check out the site. So it was a short article with a lot of comments and conversation going on. It was fantastic because that's what we like to do. That's the one thing about BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. It is a community. It is a community for people to come in, discuss things civilly about the Steelers and the various issues going on. And it's a lot like the live chat where we feel like we get to know you. We know when we look at certain people's names in the live chat, we kind of already have an idea how you feel about certain things. Same thing with the commenters on the website. So if you are listening into the podcast or here on YouTube, make sure you check out the website. Lots of good stuff. We've highlighted a lot of the writers. We haven't quite got to them all yet on the podcast here. So, Steeler news. I haven't talked to you since I was actually on a radio show in Colorado this past weekend. I think it was on Friday, where I was asked to come on.
It was on Friday because I texted you Friday morning and you let me know you had just finished up on the radio show.
Yes, I was on a radio show. I was asked to come in as a guest. The show is Sports Guy Mike. It's available. You can hear it online. And he is a Steeler fan in Colorado. But he was talking about the whole James Harrison envelope comment. This was after he made the comment, before he made his Instagram post saying, come on, man, you guys equated that to Bountygate. The problem was, even in his Instagram post, Harrison was a little bit too vague. You know, he didn't really explain and let people's imagination run wild. So you can't fault people for that when you give next to no details. What was your whole take on the whole thing with James Harrison?
James Harrison can't stand not being in the spotlight, so we'll just say something to get ourselves back there.
Well, I thought that
he
too.
Misses it.
He does miss it. But you know what? James Harrison's on a lot of shows anyway. It's not like he needed this more. But I mean, this, because they're going to have him on like a lot of the Fox Sports shows.
But that's why they have him on, because he does stuff like this.
Yeah. When you get him on, you want to hear something good from him.
That's
and
right.
What's so funny is Behind the Steel Curtain's own writer and podcaster, Tony Defio, who has Steelers Brunch with Tony on Saturdays right around noon, is one of our podcasts. He listened into the podcast and wrote an article on it. And he's like, that wasn't even the main thing that I took away from everything Harrison said. So, but of course, that was the thing that got everyone going. I don't think that it's going to really come to much. I don't expect to hear from Mike Tomlin anytime soon doing any kind of interviews, because he's not going to want to answer the question. And we'll just kind of see how it plays out. That's kind of my thought on it.
Yeah.
So, nothing to see here. Moving on.
Moving on. I went with the second jersey today in honor of the governor of Pennsylvania giving somebody a bad time for getting a haircut and a shave.
I tell you what, has anyone done? I mean, the beard. When you used to hear the beard, everyone thought of Brett Kiesel.
That's correct.
It's still Brett Kiesel.
I still think of Brett Kiesel.
Yeah, of course you do. But he had his last sheared a beard this year. Kind of sad to see that going away. Raised a lot of money for charity. I mean, he's still he's an iconic Pittsburgh Steeler. He's not going to be one of those guys that's like, oh, is he going to go into the Hall of Fame? I'd love to see him eventually go into their Ring of Honor or Hall of Honor. We don't call it the Ring of Honor, the Hall of Honor. Because he's just one of those guys. I mean, he is a classic Pittsburgh Steeler.
Right.
Still closely associated with the team, still doing things for charity. So we think of him when we hear the beard. But man, this beard has gotten more press in recent days, I think, than perhaps Kiesel's beard ever did. Everyone's talking about the beard. They want to talk about the beard out throwing footballs, and they want to talk about the beard getting trimmed because he can throw again. Obviously, for those of you that saw the video, the first part of it, someone's like, that wasn't Ben now. Of course that wasn't Ben now. That was Ben right when he got hurt. And he was saying that's what he was going to do, because Ben didn't completely shave it off. That was an old clip to say that was actually him saying he was going to keep the beard and the hair. Then he went out through with the guys, and then it showed him getting the trim. So the story was, look at Ben. He's back. He's throwing. Then all of a sudden, the story is, oh my goodness, he got his beard trimmed and wasn't wearing a mask. I mean, it just came into a whole thing of how society's working right now. Apparently that's a barbershop that's not, I just saw this before we came on, maybe about 20 minutes ago. I mean, it might've been out before that, but that's when I saw it. That barbershop's not even open. They haven't opened back up yet. They did it as a special favor for Roethlisberger and didn't even charge him. So it's not like they were open for business and that happened. It was, it was a completely different thing.
So apparently Ben and his barber are, they're pretty close.
Yeah.
And let's see, I had heard that the same barber has maybe cut the governor's hair or something.
I don't know if it was the same barber.
Know.
A lot of people were saying that Roethlisberger should have gone to the governor's barber.
Oh,
because obviously there is a barber. Obviously his beard. I trim my own beard. So
the governor's probably upset because barber's so tight with Ben that he just says, "Oh, hey, you got to get that done."
Done.
Just come over.
Yeah. I don't want that to be the story. I want to be the story to be Ben Roethlisberger out throwing footballs to Juju Smith-Schuster, Ryan Switzer, and James Conner.
Correct.
So that's how everything else is working. We'll just leave that. That's a whole different discussion that I don't really feel like getting into right now.
No, we're not going to, because we're going to talk about your man,
my man.
Yep, your man.
My favorite draft pick.
Yes, I know this was your favorite draft pick.
I never realized. It's so funny because you do all the articles, you do all the research. I did how many mock drafts and everything else, and yet your favorite draft pick is someone that you never realized could have gone to the Steelers, but it's the famous. Get this draft over with so I know who I can fall in love with. Love story. Because as soon as you hear anything about Kevin Dotson, man, what a dude for Steelers fans to fall in love with. So the thing is normally when we preview a player on this show, what we've been doing is we've looked at some numbers. We've looked at past numbers at the position. We look at what we think they could do, snap count wise or carry wise. We did last year.
You just got ripped by
what?
Ripped by our sister.
My sister? She said she could tell that I trimmed my own beard. Actually, I am in need of a trim. If you're watching on YouTube, I am in need of a trim because I know my beard is too long whenever I'm eating dinner and my mustache is in the way. So, I would cut my own hair if I could see it better, but I only have a few hairs to cut anyway. So I cut my kids' hair, my boys' hair. I don't cut my daughter's hair, but I cut my own boys' hairs. I trim my own beard, but even when I go to the barber shop,
enough about your hair. Let's get back to.
I know, but hey, that was nice.
Bromance.
Back to my bromance. Get back to the bromance. Kevin Dotson, first player selected in the NFL draft this past season that was not invited to the combine. The Steelers had him on the list to be invited to the combine. He was an All-American and didn't get invited to the combine. Don't get it. But you know what I have to say? I am so thankful that he did not get invited to the combine because chances are he would not be a Pittsburgh Steelers 4th round draft pick.
Correct.
Someone else would have seen
something
in him and he would have gone sooner. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of numbers.
It's also been the Steelers kind of way to love to get this guy. Now you got a guy coming in that's got a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't invited to the combine. He feels it probably cost him some draft position. Thankful for the Steelers for going with him in the 4th round. And now he's going to come in and, be a guard and get to learn from one of the nastiest guards out there in Castro. And I'm telling you what, this could be something. Yeah.
I mean, there's some numbers associated with him. The biggest number, I mean, you could go with the height and the weight. I think he's 340. I mean, that's not what I was going to go with it. How about here's a good stat. 52 consecutive starts with his college career to finish his college career. 52, that's fantastic. Yes, he went to a smaller school, Louisiana State. Not the only player drafted from out of there this year, because it was another offensive lineman. I'm pretty sure. I meant to look that up, but he's played a lot. He's a mauler. He's more of a run blocker than a pass blocker right now. Not that he can't be, but that's more of his what he's known for right now. And my favorite story. Well, first of all, what should be every Steeler fan's favorite story is he's a Steeler fan growing up. He even talked about how the number 36 was in about every password that he had because he was a big Jerome Bettis fan. So there's nothing like getting a player in Steeler Nation that was already a part of Steeler Nation as a fan beforehand. So great pick. Seems like a great guy. Love the whole notion that he used to come to the line of scrimmage and tell the defenders what the play was. Now, of course, that's a little bit of a mind game. You're like, is that really the play? Is that really what's going on? His whole notion was the ball's coming right here, of like, I'm going to tell you and I'm still going to beat you.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that
that's crazy.
I'm telling you, they're going to run the ball right off of me, and there's nothing you're going to do about it.
That's the thing. He's like, that doesn't matter if you know the play or not. I'm better than you. I'm going to beat you. I love that as a former offensive lineman. I love that mentality. That's why I loved the offensive line. That was my thing. A lot of linemen, when they're younger, they want to play defense because then you can get tackles and you can get stats and you could, they'll say your name over the loudspeaker. I didn't care about that. I like the whole thing of, I know the play. I know the snap count. I have the advantage right off the bat. And it's my job to make sure you can't do your job. Let's see who wins. That was it. I wasn't a big fire them up, get mean, get angry kind of player. That was probably my biggest weakness. If I was doing my own draft profile, my greatest strength was probably my footwork back then, but my greatest weakness was I didn't have a mean streak. I just kind of had the whole mentality of, I'm going to beat you, and although I'm sure he has that mean streak, I love that mentality of it doesn't matter what you do. I'm going to beat you. And that's fantastic. So the question that was asked is he the future at guard for the Steelers? Because if you look, the Steelers don't have a guard right now. Well, I mean, you had Ramon Foster retired. You have David Castro. You brought in Stefan Wisniewski. Unless you move Matt Fowler down to guard, those options, their age all starts with 3. They're on the wrong side of 30. So that's why some people thought Fowler could move to guard if one of the tackles steps up. Now that Chooks is back to healthy, he played all last year with an injury. That's why he wasn't active a lot of the times. It'll be interesting. But the question is, it'd be nice to say, oh, man, if Dotson could step up and start in 2020, that's great. You know what? That would be great. But it's okay if he doesn't see a snap. But as a 4th round rookie, the question is he the future? What do you think?
I think he is. And you and I have talked in the past that, depending on what could conspire, he could conceivably see the most snaps of all the rookies.
Yes.
He could also conceivably see the least snaps of all the rookies. I think he potentially is the future for the Steelers. I think that's why they drafted him where they did, because they see some potential there. Really, it's all going to depend on him, which is why I'm really hoping he's coming in with that big chip on his shoulder.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked this question was because it's quite interesting. And it's right. He could range from 100% to 0% of offensive snaps.
Correct.
He could start every game if he wins the job. This isn't a job where they rotate guys in. It's not. With the expanded roster on game day, meaning you can have 2 extra guys active on game day. If one is an offensive lineman, there is a good chance he's active.
Yeah.
There's a good chance, even if he's not the starter, that he'll be active.
Right. He'll get a helmet most weeks.
Maybe he plays. Maybe because he's active and they want to get him out there some. Maybe he's on the field goal team, or the extra point team, something like that. It could be one of those things since he's there. Who knows? What I wanted to bring up, what I found is interesting, is when's the last time the Steelers drafted a guard?
Is it De Castro?
It is, I would say, Castro. There is one possibility. Technically, in 2014, in the 5th round, they drafted Wesley Johnson, who played pretty much everywhere across the offensive line at one point or another. I'm pretty sure, now someone could correct me, that he was pretty much a tackle when he was at Pittsburgh, but he was with a lot of other teams. So I wouldn't say that he was drafted as a guard per se. But it's not that he didn't count. But he wasn't strictly a guard. The last player that they've drafted that was a guard, David Castro in 2012. What's crazy is then they drafted Keith Williams in the 6th round of 2011. And Chris Scott in 2010 in the 5th round, the same year they took Marquise Pouncey. That's what they've been investing in the guard position. They have not drafted it hardly at all, and definitely not, sometimes it's that tail end of the draft.
Right.
You could argue, well, who's not on this list is Durbin Gray, drafted last year in the 7th round. So it's funny because some places actually have him listed as a tackle because he played tackle in college, but the Steelers had him more as a guard. So I didn't want anyone to get too confused with that. But he that's a 7th rounder, and right now the Steelers haven't really showed for sure that that's where he's going to be, which is interesting because Pro Football Reference has him listed as a tackle, although I would consider him a guard. But that's because they haven't given much draft capital. Now, when you look at it, I've always said the 4th round is that middle of the road draft pick. When you're talking about, I actually did an article on this past weekend of expectations based on a draft pick of where they're drafted. And with the rounds, I said, assume they're in the middle, because obviously the end of the 1st round and the top of the 2nd round are almost the same. But if you're thinking about middle of the round, your 1st rounder is someone that you would be great if they could step in and start right away, but someone who should be ready to start by the end of their 1st year. 2nd round pick is a guy that might not start his 1st year, but should be ready year 2. 3rd round is when it kind of gets in there. It would be nice if they developed into a starter, but you at least want a quality backup. 4th round guys, in my opinion, are guys that they're going to make the roster their rookie year. It's very rare that a 4th round pick does not make the roster as a rookie. Sometimes they might end up on IR or other things. They have to be a complete bust in most cases for them to not make the team. So they get a chance, but sometimes they pan out, sometimes they don't. So it's not the end of the world. Then when you get beyond that, like when it comes to like 5th rounders, a lot of times, like the Steelers, that's why I say it'll be interesting to see what happens with Zach Gentry this year, because like Marcus Allen was a 5th rounder the year before. He was on the 53-man roster and inactive most weeks, much like Gentry, his rookie year. And then his 2nd year, he was on the practice squad for all but the last game. Right. So that's kind of how it could go with a 5th year guy. But for a 4th year guy, you're thinking they're going to get the chance and you hope you hit it, but you don't necessarily hit every 4th round pick. Does that sound reasonable there?
Yeah.
So it's funny. So we talk about Kevin Dotson. We're like, is he the future at the guard position? Now's a great time for them to draft a player like him, because he doesn't have to step in and start right away. But you have a season or two to find out if he could be something or not.
Right.
You're only going to catch lightning in a bottle of getting these, undrafted free agents that end up being good starters for you so many times that eventually they're going to either have to get that middle round guy that turns into something, or they're going to have to draft it high again. I mean, they haven't. That's the highest. They took him in the 4th. Last year not last year. 2 years ago, they took Chuks Okorafor in the 3rd as their 2nd, 3rd round pick. 2 years before that was Gerald Hawkins was a 4th round pick. Other than that, you're only looking at high picks like the Castro and Adams and Gilbert and Pouncey, or low picks. You don't have a lot of middle of the road guys. So is he the future for the guard? He's the best future they have right now. But I think what the easiest way to answer this question is he is potentially the future at guard, but it's going to help the Steelers to see if they're going to have to invest high draft capital in the position within the next couple of years.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I've been talking a lot because this is my guy. I was just going to give you a chance. Go ahead.
They've got a year or two to figure him out, exactly like you said, to figure him out. I think there's the chance this guy could be a future starter in a couple of years. But they have the time to figure that out. Then if we're looking at 2 years down the road, then it could be turned around and be like, man, we need to get somebody in the first or second round. Then that's what we've got to turn around and do. But you got a guy that you think could potentially do this, that you could get in round 4, get him now when you didn't have to have him, and figure out then if he's your guy.
Yeah. Absolutely. It was a great place to do it, but it's funny. It's because Lance brought up the whole notion of, limited off season. Would someone like that be ready to step in and be a starter? Chances are it would be extremely difficult, but the Steelers don't need him to be. He wasn't drafted to start this year. So that's what's great. The only way Dotson is a starter is if he comes out and blows the doors off when they finally get out to practice, which he very well could, but he doesn't have to.
Right.
If he starts this year,
he's not expected to.
He's not expected to. Marquise Pouncey was a first-round draft pick and was not expected to start at center as a rookie. They thought he was going to be playing they thought, oh, yeah, he might be able to win the guard spot. But he came out and played so well, they couldn't keep him off the field.
Right.
And that's a first-round pick. But you have these kind of guys that you're like, we can't not play them. That's exactly. I know I'm still bringing up first-round picks, which is a completely different scenario. Don't expect this out of Dotson. But part of the reason, the whole James Harrison issue, he brought it up in that podcast. He was promised X number of snaps going into that year. You know what? You were promised the expectation of that number of snaps. You know what determined if you got that number of snaps? Your play and the play of others. And it wasn't as much as James Harrison sure, I'm sure he had lost a step by then. It was hard to tell because you couldn't really see him on the field. But, for us to judge with the Steelers in practice, but they couldn't keep TJ Watt off the field. You draft a guy in the first round, you got James Harrison. You don't have to start him or play him right away. He's a guy that can work into the rotation. And my goodness, they couldn't keep that guy off the field. You couldn't. You can't. And that's what I've said about the offensive line, even before they drafted Dotson. What I'd like to see, because they're like, what's going to happen at guard? Is it going to be Wisniewski? Are they going to move Filer? If they move Filer, then who's going to be the tackle? Is it going to be Chooks? Is it going to be Banner? What are they going to do? Are they going to draft a tackle? Are they going to draft a guard? What's going to happen? My thing is I'm like, don't pigeonhole Filer to say, like Jefferson Hartman says, I'd like to keep Filer where he is. Well, you didn't keep Filer where he was, because where Filer was at guard. And you couldn't keep him off the field till you played him at tackle, because that's where he had a spot. So you're not moving him to guard, you're moving him back to guard, which is different. And I'm not saying they should, but what I'm saying is you need someone like Chooks, Banner, Wisniewski, Dotson, one of these guys, just one, to step it up so much that the Steelers have to say, we can't keep this guy off the field. We've got to get him out there. That's the recipe for success for the Steelers. And they've got 4 guys for basically one spot. Four guys for, because whether it would be 2 of the guards or 2 of the tackles. So
right.
That's just me.
Well, you just love it. And you're right. And you've got those 4 guys. Not only do you have those 4 guys, but because of Filer being so flexibility between being able to play guard and tackle, that leaves both of those positions. Yeah, whoever can show that they are the best at what they are, and you can't keep this guy off the field, then if it's one of the guys at tackle, then Filer's at guard. If it's one of the guys at guard, then Filer's going to be out at tackle, and hopefully that we are keeping Ben clean and smashing the ball down somebody's throat.
Yeah, like Reed said, and I don't know if he's answering because there's whole different conversations going on in the live chat, but if he's answering what we said, he says it's a good problem to have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just what it is. Robert was saying Dotson can play tackle too. I'm not going. There's no way they're going to ask a rookie coming in, especially this offseason, to learn two positions for the first year. They're going to say stick to. I mean, it's bad enough telling him to learn both guards. You know, I mean, it's a little bit different. Like with when we get to Carlos Davis, they said, "Oh, learn the spots along the defensive line," because they don't make them all that. They don't use them all that differently for the Steelers. But there's a difference between center, guard, tackle. So I just say I think, especially for his first year, that they'll try to stick with one main position for him. That's exactly what they did with Durbin Gray last year as well.
Right.
So, and it wasn't until they had someone like Matt Filer that you're like, oh, well, now he can suddenly play tackle. He spent a lot of years on practice squads. He didn't start off for the Steelers. I think he was with the Detroit Lions on a practice squad. So he had years of going through this stuff before that happened. So,
well, I like Steeler fan 74. That's a good question. I wonder what position Fowler would rather play. And first of all, I can tell you, Fowler wants to start. He doesn't care where it's at. And if he's the kind of guy he comes across as, Fowler's going to say to Coach, I'll play whichever one you need me.
Yes, I mean, especially he's in a contract year because he was given. And now remember, Matt Filer counts towards the Steelers salary cap right now, but he's technically not under contract yet. He hasn't signed his tender. Right. Okay. He could go out and find a better deal with another team, and then the Steelers would have the option to match it or get a second round pick from that. Don't know that's actually going on. Especially, I didn't watch the whole thing, but apparently Zach Banner was following Matt Filer and on the road. There was some video that Banner put out there. He does all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah. Now, Dragon JZ said something. I'm actually going to bring this up if it'll come up. He says, can you teach the linemen as a group so everyone knows what everyone else is doing too? I've always thought that helps with understanding the playbook. Absolutely. I'm going to tell you this. Now, remember, my coaching experience is from high school, okay? From freshmen to seniors in high school. That a lot of times at that age group, and this is just because that's where I come from, you were lucky for them to know what they were supposed to do. I would do everything I could, because when you look at it, he's so right. And that's the thing about what I love about coaching is I love scheming up how to block a play. Because when you do it, it just makes sense. When you see it out on a field or draw it with X's and O's on a paper, it just makes so much sense of, oh, well, this is going here. This guy has this one has this one, and you learn your responsibilities. But that was a very simple offense, and they struggled with it. I'm not saying that professionals would have the same problem, that it is so much easier to know what everyone else is doing. But I'm not privy to that information inside.
I would say this: some guys can do it, and some guys can't do it.
Well, honestly, that's kind of what makes a good center, because the center is making the blocking calls and knows what everyone should do. That's the key to a good center. And that's kind of why the Steelers, you didn't know if the rookie was going to be ready to step in and play center right away with Marquise Pouncey. Boom, boom, boom. He's there ready. He's making the calls. He's calling the blocking. The center's the guy that's kind of got to know what everyone's doing. That's why when, I wish I could remember what year and even what game it was that Coach Tomlin afterwards said, you were really close to seeing Marquise Pouncey at tackle, because they were dealing with injuries and you needed someone that knew what to do, and he knew what everyone was supposed to do. So yeah, so it's crazy. But I just think that you don't want to have your offensive line this year being, well, I guess this is our best option. You want it to be like, who's going to step up and just grab it? I don't think it's going to be Dobson.
And
I don't think it needs to be. But
what would be even better is by the time you get through and get to the ready to start the season, you're like, oh, wow, they got to sit one of these guys down. Wow.
Yeah.
Who do we sit down? That's the problem you want to have is you need 5 guys. What you want to have is 6 or 7 guys so that you feel bad that somebody's not out on the field. Yeah. Because they're showing that they can do it. If we could have that kind of problem, I'd love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Because you can only get so many of. You can only have 5. Well, if you want to bring them out as an extra attack, eligible.
72 eligible.
Yeah, you can only get 5 or 6 of them out there. So, but the Steelers have had depth on the offensive line for a while, and it's a good problem to have when you have a lot of depth. They kept an extra offensive lineman for a while last year, and as soon as they exposed them to waivers, gone. Yeah. And they lost Fred Johnson. So it's because there's not an abundance of quality offensive linemen out there for the NFL. Yep. That's offensive line and quarterback. It's tough to find enough sustainable people at those positions. That's why leagues like the AAF and even the XFL, I think the AAF had more of a problem than the XFL, that struggled with their quality of football was quarterback play, offensive line play, which go hand in hand. Yeah. So if the Steelers, some people are like, oh, I'm really worried about our depth, on the interior offensive line. I'm not right now because, every team's worried about their depth on the offensive line. And you're like, oh, what if someone goes down? We're not going to know until we actually get out there and see some football played, because your main names at guard, if it's not Filer, are 2 guys that weren't on the team last year.
Right.
So, and we can't count out Durbin Gray, who has a year on the practice squad. So it'll be interesting to see.
Sure will.
So, and they get to go up against that great defense all the time, which hopefully makes them better. Now, there's been a lot of activity going on in the live chat, and we've stayed on topic here for this show, but we are getting ready to transition into the next show, which have we seen Thaddeus? I'm going to be so disappointed if he's not there to answer his question, because we're going to be answering his question that he had last week in the next show. We're going to do that.
Hopefully, if he doesn't make it, he'll listen to it on podcast form.
Exactly. So we're going to address more stuff in the live chat of the next show. I am going to bring up one right here. I know there were some other off-topic things. I know Matt Canada was something that was brought up in the live chat and things like that. These are some things we might be able to address next show. But I want to bring this up because it goes right to the heart of how we want to finish all these shows where we're previewing this one. And this was from Awesome Stuff 1983. Who makes the 53 when it comes to the O-line? I already had mine. I talked about it last week on the preview. I've done an article. So I got it in the back of my mind. Rich, go.
No.
You're not going to go? Who's your O-line? Put you on the spot.
Okay, well, first I'll go with projected starters. Okay, will be Big Al, Castro, Pouncey. I'm going to put Wisniewski in there for right now, and Filer. Okay. Then you're going to have Chooks, Banner, Dotson.
That's 8.
That's 8. Now I'm going to go ahead with a 9th, figuring that we're going to see a 9th on the roster a good bit, and probably going with Gray.
That was my next guy of what I had for mine. I stuck with 8.
The only reason I went with 9 is because we go to that 9th one when we, so that we get the extra guy off the practice squad kind of deal.
Yeah. See, my thing is sometimes the Steelers kept that extra offensive lineman around there. They might need to, if they're that good, keep the extra lineman so no one else can get them. Yeah. If you think Gray's the guy, but you don't think someone's going to snag him, you get him on the practice squad. You could carry 8 and dress all 8 And since you have this thing that you can bring up 2 players from the practice squad without having to take anyone off your 53, you could bring up an offensive lineman if needs be to get to 8. Or you carry 9 offensive linemen, knowing that, let's say you have a 9th. Let's say you treat Durbin Gray or whoever it could be. Maybe it's was it JC Hassenauer or, who the center, maybe it's someone like that, but you're afraid that if you get rid of them, you have to pull someone up in order to have another lineman, and you put them on waivers like you did for Johnson last year. You lose them. You keep that 9th lineman that you're not dressing, and you're like, oh no, well, now we're a little bit short at another position. You have that spot to move up from the practice squad. I think with that whole practice squad rule this year, it's going to, who they think they can get on the practice squad might determine how many they keep of a few of these positions.
Yeah.
Are they going to keep 8 or 9 linemen? Well, if they don't think that 9th lineman will get to the practice squad, keep them. Oh, or if you think your 5th linebacker, inside, outside, or let's say this, your 5th safety. If you think your 5th safety could get to the practice squad, maybe you keep them there and then have them available when you need to pull them up. One of those things. So it's interesting. Those are the 8 that I have. But you know what? When we started this, well, obviously you weren't doing the podcast at this time last year. But when Steeler fans talked about these kind of players at this point last year, no one would have thought about Fred Johnson. He was just some undrafted free agent, that came out, played great in the preseason and landed on the 53. And unfortunately, the Steelers lost him. So there could be someone that's there that the Steelers aren't going to want to lose, that we don't even realize who it is right now. They have a couple guys that were undrafted free agents that could be those guys. So, I mean, they got a guy, I'm pretty sure he was a center out of Tulane. I can't remember his name right now. He played at Tulane as a grad student because he'd already graduated from Brown. We talked about that on one of our shows. I'm like, that's an intelligent guy. Maybe he steps up to be something, or maybe because of the,
you don't know. There's still a lot of answers to the question. But just they can project it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and anything else you want to say to close up this show?
Yes, Russ. That last comment I saw you put up there was hilarious.
Russ,
he said you blocked Lance. And then he was like, no, just kidding. We all know Lance lost his internet.
I did not block Lance this time. No, I've never blocked Lance. So, yeah. Hey, and thank you. Brad brought up the actual name of the player I was talking about. That is Christian Montenot.
Thank you, Brad.
Out of Tulane. So, just people to keep an eye on. We'll see how it works.
Yep.
So we're going to come back. For those of you that I know sometimes on Thursdays, you're like, oh, I don't listen to the after party there and talk about Steelers stuff. We talk about even more Steelers stuff when it comes to our second show. There's no letdown on what we're doing. So, but make sure more than anything that you're checking out the Steelers whole family of podcasts. We got Lance Williams in here. Lance, you can see Lance tomorrow night on the Standards to Standard. You can see him Friday in the solo show for, Yeah, I Said It. You see him on Sundays at the Homer and the Hater. We also got Thursday. I'll be back with Brian and Jeff on the preview, because tomorrow night will be Jeff and Lance. Saturday, we got Tony's show. Mm-hmm. Sunday, you've got Jeff and Lance again with the Homer and the Hater. And then you've got Tony and Brian for the Q&A on Mondays. So we're giving you shows every day. So for those of you that are here and watching and wanting to know what's going on, this show will end. We'll come back on the channel in 5 minutes or hopefully less to start show number 2. For those of you listening in podcast form, both the second show will be most likely, hopefully we get the audio ready to go on Wednesday afternoon sometime with this show coming out in the morning.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe and hit that like button.
That's the best thing you can do for us. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, get your notifications so that way you know when we're going live. And as Lance likes to always say, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Thanks for geeking out with us.